Hello, and welcome to this week's class, and this is on cinematography. Let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, some things to think about while reading and while looking at this PowerPoint is, why do you think lighting is the second half of a camera department? Why is lighting so important to cinematography? What are the different camera angles and what meaning do they convey? What is a long take? What can it achieve that a short take cannot? What is the difference between a long take and a long shot? So, cinematography. Cinematography is the process of lighting, framing, and capturing moving images on film stock or digital medium. All of these things come into play with a cinematographer. They are in charge of the lighting, the framing, the capturing, even what film stock it's on, and whether it's on a digital medium or not. The director of photography is the same thing as a cinematographer. Sometimes you'll hear those interchangeably. Sometimes they even shorten it to DP. Some production terms in cinematography. Production terms, one is a shot. A shot is one uninterrupted run of the camera. A shot can be as short or as long as necessary. The term take refers to the number of times a particular shot is taken. A setup is one camera position and everything associated with it. Let's take a look at a scene and just analyze, just while you're watching, look at how many shots are in this scene. See if you can get a right number count.
I want him found. Not tomorrow, not after breakfast, now.
Yes, sir.
Let's go. Move your butts. Move it!
Stay.
Well,
what?
I see you two all the time. You're thick as thieves, you are. He must have said something.
Also, Warden. Not a word.
Lord, it's a miracle. Man up and vanished like a fart in the wind. Nothing left but some damn rocks on the windowsill. And that cupcake on the wall. Let's ask her. Maybe she knows. What say you there, fussy britches? Feel like talking? Guess not. Why should she be any different? This is a conspiracy. That's what this is. One big damn conspiracy. And everyone's in on it. Including her.
So yeah, that scene, if you can count the scene, you watch the scene and hopefully you counted each shot. Now remember, shots that you see again doesn't count as another shot. There's at least, from my count, about 8 different shots for that one scene. Basically a different frame, in a sense. Looking at the warden, looking at Red, and then looking at the poster. Those are all different shots. And then there's kind of a medium close-up and then a close-up, and then there's a shot when he realized that the poster was not just a poster. Those are all different shots in a scene. And then say there's a shot on the warden, and then that same shot, let's say going to, that shot there, or let's say this shot here, maybe he messed up a line, or maybe they just want another take, just to be sure that they had a good amount of performance. You could do more than one take of this one shot, so you can have multiple takes. A lot of times if the actors are really good, you probably only need 3 takes, especially in an easy scene like this, but you would have maybe say 3 takes for this shot here, but then you would maybe have probably 1 take, maybe 2 takes of something like this. This is considered insert, where literally probably the actors are not even on the scene, but because nobody's in there, so why do we need to have the actors wait around just so they can get a shot of a poster from their POV? So this likely could have been even 1 shot. But you have like a shot here, maybe Morgan Freeman flubbed up his line, and you'd have another take. But this is 1 shot, a particular shot, and they may have had more than 1 take of it. So yeah, that's just so you know the difference between shot and take. The Camera department is split into kind of two areas. There's the gaffer underneath basically there's this side, which is usually the electric side, and it's the gaffer. They're in charge of electricity and lights and setting up lights and all that stuff. Best boy is first assistant electrician to the gaffer on a production set. And grips are all around the handy person on a movie production set, most often working with the camera crews and electrical crews. Grips are, well, they involve anything that involves gripping something, holding something, things that hold up poles and electricity, etc. Then there's the camera department. There's the camera operator, the member of the camera crew who does the actual shooting. They're the ones actually pressing the button. It's not always. Sometimes the cinematographer will be the camera operator, but more often in major sets, it'll be a separate person. Then there's under them the first assistant camera. The first AC assists the camera operator. The first AC oversees everything having to do with the camera, lenses, and supporting equipment. Second assistant camera. The second AC prepares the slate that is used to identify each scene as it is being filmed, files camera reports, and loads the camera. So there's two different departments. Some of the cinematographic properties. Cinematographic properties, I think I'm saying that right. Properties of cinematography, basically. Some of the things that the cinematographer, the director of photography, has to think about is film stock, lighting, and lenses. Those are materials and equipment that have certain advantages and disadvantages. The cinematographer might want a different film stock that has sometimes it's called fast film, as in it can take in more light faster. Then you have something like the lighting. They have to consider the lighting. They also have to consider the lenses. Sometimes different lenses will let in a certain amount of light and will add a certain feel. Framing. During framing, the DP has to consider the proximity to camera, the depth and the camera angle and height, the scale and the camera movement when setting up for a shot. Speed and length of the shot. In addition to the spatial, we have to consider the temporal properties. How fast or slow does the shot play back and for how long? Properties to think of before framing. Film and digital format. So the cinematography, and in cinematography, they have to decide whether they're going to be using film or digital. If they're using film, here's some of the things they have to think about. So film stock is celluloid used to record movies. Film stock is coated with thousands of microscopic silver halide crystals that react to light. The larger the format, the more space for the crystals. So format, there's different formats. There's 8mm. These are literally the measurements of where the actual piece, where the filming is going to take place. It's the kind of this space between here. So 8mm film is super 8mm film. I forgot. I looked up what's the difference between super 8mm. Oh yeah, I believe the millimeter for super 8, the original millimeter one was like it's actually the width of the piece of celluloid strip, and then super 8 was where the frame in the strip was a little larger than the frame in the 8mm, so it allowed for a little bit more space and therefore more resolution. So then there's 16mm, super 16mm, 35mm. That's the average when film is filmed on film. It's usually 35mm that you'll see. Now, if you want to, a lot of times 70mm is what you'll see for cowboy movies or people who want a wide aspect. Lawrence of Arabia is 70mm. Quentin Tarantino likes to film, especially I think Hateful Eight was filmed in 70mm. And then IMAX, which is actually a very big film reel. It's about as big as almost like a kind of a small wallet size, is about the size of the each frame. So it's actually very big. Speed, something that I think of as how, and this is not referring to how fast it looks on screen. It has to do with now the film stock. So speed is how sensitive the film stock is to light. The more sensitive the film is, the faster the film develops. Quote, fast film stocks have larger crystals that need less light to record an image, whereas, quote, slow film stocks have fine-grained crystals and require more light for proper exposure. So that's when you say, like, I got a fast film stock. They're referring to like how fast it can take in light, and therefore how much light it can take in a lot of light usually. Whereas a slow film stock, it can take in less light. And again, depending on what you want. If somebody wanted probably fast film stock, if they were going to film in a dark area, so they can take in more light. Digital stock. Now that we film more often in digital now, although a lot of people still film in film, digital uses an electric sensor that captures fragments of image information on pixels. The resulting data is stored on a hard drive in the form of codec, a specialized digital format that compresses all that pixel info into manageable size files for editing and viewing. So similar to, instead of crystals, pixels are basically what's recording the images, and the more pixels that can be on the basically sensor, the more that you can more information you get, the more resolution you can get. Black and white film is something that some cinematographic properties that the filmmakers have to think about. So when making a black and white film, set and costume designers collaborate with cinematographers to ensure the designs produce optimal variety of tone. So when you think about it, if they're filming going to be in black and white, they have to make sure, like as we can see here, there's different tones going on. If the grays were just not very separate, then he wouldn't stand out much from the background. His clothing wouldn't be much separated. They made sure to make sure his hat was dark, his shirt was light, his vest was grayish, and that all these tones didn't quite match his skin color as well. These are things to think about when they are making something black and white. Color film. This is if you're making films, how you're going to be doing it, especially back when they first were making films. They had different ways of creating color. Additive color system is where black and white film had color added onto them by being projected through either filters, tinted, or hand-colored. If you recall, when we were watching some of the film history class, the Great Train Robbery, there was parts where there was color in the film, and that's additive color system, where they literally are going in and coloring each frame, and they literally would have to go through each frame by frame, coloring in like the parts here. Say if they wanted just one of these people here colored, they would go to that person, then color that person here, and then color that person there. And that's very meticulous process. But that's additive color system. Tinted. I showed you a little bit of that German expression in film. Dr. Caligari. It was kind of greenish. That was a green tint that they added later. So that's additive. Subtractive color system is different, where the photographed light was split through a prism to 3 separate negatives, red, blue, and green, then inverted to their positives that would get dyed with their complementary colors, cyan, yellow, and magenta. Once these dyes were transferred and combined, a color print was produced. I'll be honest, I'd say I kind of know what it's talking about here, but it's all I know is that they film with 3 separate negatives, I guess, all put together or filmed at the same time, and then they put it all together in those negatives, again, and they reverse into cyan, yellow, magenta, and then you put all those colors together, and that creates a color photograph, something like that. And hence that was when they first were able to make color photos. And they started able to make color film, subtractive color system. I think it was back in the 1930s. I think it was the first known film that did that was I believe Wizard of Oz. Lenses. Cinematography has to also consider the lenses. Prime lenses are lenses that have fixed focal length. So if you think of a lens like a zoom lens, where it can you can twist it and it changes it goes from like a wide angle, then goes into a telescope kind of thing. That's a zoom lens, where it's got multiple focal length lens, or it's say variable focal length. Prime lenses you can get like one lens that's a wide angle lens, and it can't change at all. Or you can get one that's kind of more normal looking, middle focal length. And then you can get one that can look far away, but that it can't do anything else. Prime lenses are preferred a lot of times by cinematographers and photographers because it allows in more light, because there's less mechanics going on inside the lens here. Zoom lenses have more mechanics, they have more pieces in there, like different lenses, so that they can create the effect of either a short or a telephoto lens, and therefore it allows in less light. So a prime lens allows in more light, and so a lot of times filmmakers will prefer to just transfer out lenses between shots, so they can let in more light. So those are prime lenses, though. Prime lenses have fixed focal lengths, so just to make sure you know that. A wide angle lens. And a wide angle lens, just note, creates the illusion of depth within a frame. It tends to make things look deeper, albeit with some distortion at the edges. Sometimes a very wide angle lens you might have seen is kind of like fisheye and just looks really distorted. Normal, again, tries to recreate kind of how we perceive the world, pretty normal distance. Telephoto lens flattens the space and depth and distorts perspectival relations. Is that right? Perspectival. Anyway, let me show you an example. So this is shot with different lens types. So we're looking at, say, very wide angle lens, and again, you can see it's slightly distorted. So yeah, if you look at this, I'm just going ahead and go through it, but maybe on your own you can try and guess which one is wide and which one's normal and which one's telephoto. Maybe you can pause and try to figure out on your own. But let me go through just so you have a good sense of that. Wide angle lens, again, distorts it. A lot of times it will even elongate the face. It elongates the entire area in this area. Now this is considered right here. These two are kind of considered, actually no, this one's considered more normal the most. 35 millimeter lens is the most normal. So you say 35 millimeter lens, sometimes 50 is considered pretty normal looking, where like, okay, that's how far she is from the door. It looks pretty realistic. She looks pretty realistic. This my perspective seems to be realistic to it. But notice here with a wide angle lens, it stretches it out. It makes the place look further away. It looks like she's like 20 feet from the door. And then you see her face. It's kind of almost squished a little, and it's kind of elongated features of the nose. That's what a wide angle lens will do. Normal lens looks more like this. Notice here, though, is 70 millimeter lens is starting to look a little more telephoto. You see the door is we're flattening the space now with telephoto. The door is looking a little closer to her. Just so you know, telephoto lens tend to make portraits look better because it doesn't elongate the nose and whatnot. We tend to look more flattering in telephoto lens. And again, this is very telephoto here. As we can see, the door looks like she's like right behind her, like she's only a couple steps away. And that's what telephoto does. It flattens the space, whereas wide elongates the space. And a lot of times you see more on the sides here too. Notice with wide angle we can see more going on here, whereas telephoto you see a lot less. So yeah, that's just to give you a sense of what those lenses do. And again, this can be plotted very specifically in film. Notice it gives a distorted look here. You'll see this sometimes. You'll see this sometimes in films trying to create maybe a person with a distorted reality or a distorted realization. Hang on, let me drink water. And so let me show you too how you can use zoom lenses in films. Here's some examples of zoom. Sometimes people will use a snap zoom. Quentin Tarantino used quite a few, and this is just a little video that shows you how many times he uses zoom snaps in snap zooms in Django Unchained.
Whoa. Whoa, 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 whoa. What the hell you think you're doing, boy? One could almost say you's a nigga.
And there's more throughout it. But yeah, that's kind of a snap zoom. They're using that zoom lens and snapping, doing a quick zoom in or out, etc. Here's an example of how you can use a zoom lens also that helps with the kind of the part of the production design or the mise en scène rather. Here you can see where this is a telephoto lens. You can see how it doesn't seem like he's moving as much, and the background's kind of flattened. And then when we zoom out, you see how we elongate the space. Now he's a lot smaller in the frame, and how we can see a lot more on the sides. So we went from a telephoto lens shot to and we zoomed out into a wide angle lens, and that's what the zoom is doing. The cinematography has to think of framing, and you'll see this very much in any storyboard. There are different kinds of framing, and we'll go over each one. So an established shot, or rather an extreme long shot, is going to look basically something like this. We're going to have a lot of times it's for establishing where we are. It's going to maybe show a person about this size in the frame. You can't see a person, but you can see about how big they would be in the frame. Then we get a long shot. Long shot is also known as a full body shot, a shot that shows the full human body, usually filling the frame and some of its surroundings. Medium long shot is also known as plain American or American shot, a shot that shows a character from the knees up and includes most of the person's body. Medium shot. Remember, that was a medium long shot. This is a medium shot. A shot usually from the waist up, for the most part. Medium close-up. It's a shot that shows a character from the middle of the chest to the top of the head. A medium close-up provides a view of the face that catches minor changes in expression. So now as we're moving in, it's to try and capture the expression of the character. Close-up is a shot that often shows a part of the body filling the frame, traditionally a face. This is actually almost brinking on an extreme close-up because usually you see the top of the head and the bottom of the head, like from the chin to the top. And this is starting to go a little bit in there, but for the most part, this is a close-up. An extreme close-up is a very close shot of a particular detail, such as a person's eye, a ring on a finger, or a watch face, or the Lord of the Rings ring. So those are these are things you want to get in your head to remember to learn. It's because these are the types of shots you'll see, and sometimes it might ask you to get some of these shots. And each of these shots will create kind of helps create a feeling sometimes, especially as we get closer. A lot of scenes will start out further and then move in as we get more intimate into the conversation. Sometimes you want to have a body shot in a scene to maybe accentuate like what they're doing, the gestures that they're doing, a long shot so that we can see their entire body. Or maybe we want to put emphasis on a location. So all these shots are decided for a reason. Depth of field. It's the portion of the space in front of a camera in which objects are in apparent sharp focus. The idea being that deep space composition you'll need deep focus as well. So a deep space composition is a total visual composition that places significant information on all three planes of the frame. Remember when we showed you the deep space composition in mise-en-scène, you can see there's someone in the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. In which case you would need deep focus cinematography to create this. Most of the time, to create this, you'll need a short focal length lens, which is a wide-angle lens. It's where you can see. Notice when we going back, how everything was in focus here, because a wide-angle lens tends to have a wider focal length. Basically, notice it's out of focus in this one. Now you can actually, depending on exposure, can create a wider range of focus. It's difficult because you have to balance the exposure with your lens and everything. But notice with the wide-angle lens, you can create mostly focus. Notice it's pretty mostly focus here too, just not as in focus here. But yeah, that's what deep focus composition, deep space composition will a lot of times need deep focus. Will need deep focus in photography, and a lot of times they use short focal length to capture that. Here's that example I mentioned that we looked at in Cinematography Week. Angles, camera angles is also a major aspect of cinematography. High angle shots, we talked about this in Film Form Week, also known as a high shot or a down shot. A shot that, I'd rather just call it high shot so we're not getting confused. It's a shot that is made with the camera above the action and that typically implies the observer's sense of superiority. Eye level shot is a shot that is made from the observer's eye level and usually implies that the observer's attitude is neutral toward the subject being photographed. Low angle shot, also known as a low shot, a shot that is made with the camera below the shot at the action and that typically places the observer in a position of inferiority. Here's how it can be used in film. So a high angle shot, we have here Psycho. If you've seen the film Psycho, people get murdered. So this is actually a very high angle shot. Usually it's not going to be that high in a film, but as you can see, it's putting this character in a form of inferiority as this person is about to stab this person. Spoiler alert. Although sometimes, by the way, you can have a high angle shot that has a sense, not necessarily a sense of someone being victimized, but maybe someone who is surrendering themselves in a sense. And so this is from the film Shawshank Redemption, and this is kind of a moment of surrender. And so even though it's actually a good moment in the film because he's actually getting redemption at this point, it's because he had to kind of go through a certain surrendering. Low angle shot, here's an example from The Dark Knight. We were definitely in this moment in the film showing the Joker as menacing. Therefore, we're in the inferior position and he's in the superior position. What I find is interesting too, just like the last shot, that you can, in this case, in this film, this shot here, this is from Untouchables, where the character is just about to find out that he's right in the midst of the person who killed his best friend. And so I find what's interesting is that this low angle shot is so low, it's almost starting to become distorted, so that even though it's almost now just taking away the feeling of superiority and just creating a slightly distorted image because he's so low. But for the most part, you'll see it used for this particular reason, the menace or someone who has power with a low shot. And again, with a high angle, it tends to put this character in the low position and that they're about to be harmed, and they're seen in an inferior position. Low angle shot puts the character in a kind of a superior or happy or powerful position. And then eye level, as the book said, it's kind of a neutral position. But also I'd say it kind of helps us a lot of times relate to the character. A lot of times when we're seeing on eye to eye, we can kind of feel like we're relating to them. Then there's bird's eye view. A lot of times it can be used as also a menacing situation. Like this is a scene from the film The Birds, a Hitchcock film, a horror film, and there's basically a car just explode and this city is about to be under attack from these birds. So there's a sense of diminishing them here in this photograph, in this picture. Where although sometimes it can just be an establishing shot, like this is from the film Batman Begins, and this is a establishing shot of Gotham. So yeah. And then there's camera movement. So cinematographer can also control the movement of the camera. Again, this is all decided with the director. And there are different kinds of moves. There's dollying in or dollying out. Boom jib is moving the camera just straight up or straight down. Trucking is just moving the camera sideways without turning it. Panning is where you're turning it sideways but not moving it. Tilting the camera is basically where you're moving it up and down. Not moving the camera. It's different from jib. It's basically tilting it down or up, looking down or up. And then roll, you would have to have a special apparatus for this or try to do something like it handheld, and where it's kind of the camera is literally rolling sideways here. So here's a look at a clip where they use a trucking movement, and just watch how the scene unfolds and try to think of why they decided to do it this way. So yeah, So how would you describe the hallway fight scene, and why do you think it was shot that way? So yeah, it's something to think about. Maybe write it down. Why do you think it was shot that way? Using that trucking movement for that particular scene and for that fight scene, for the fight choreography. Also, in being all in one take. Think of maybe why they wanted to show it in that way. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be something like uber deep, but it's to create just an interesting feeling for the scene. A lot of times, filmmakers make decisions just to make it more dynamic than it would normally be. So many films could have decided to just shoot a bunch of different shots. Just so they can so you can hide a lot of the aspects of the fighting or the seams, hide the seams, and just edit it all together. But they obviously wanted to create a certain feeling by creating a one shot and in this trucking kind of movement. And they literally had to create a set where the wall was taken out just to create that shot. So why do you think it was shot that way? We can discuss that later. So a dolly shot, also known as a tracking shot, is a shot taken by a camera fixed to a wheeled support called a dolly. Slow movement of the camera toward a subject, that's dollying in, making the subject appear larger and more significant. Such gradual intensification is commonly used at moments of a character's realization and or decision, or as a point of view shot to indicate the reason for the character's realization. Dollying out is a movement of the camera away from the subject that is often used for slow disclosure, which occurs when an edited succession of images leads from A to B to C as they gradually reveal the elements of a scene. Each image expands on the one before, thereby changing its significance with the new information. So look at the scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark. You may have seen this scene, and you'll see that there's actually quite a bit dollying in and out in this scene. You may have not noticed before until now I brought it to your attention. I noticed that dollying in, a lot of times I don't notice it in films. They actually use it quite a bit.
Just hurry. There's nothing to fear here.
That's what scares me. Stay here.
If you insist, senor.
Hard to stop watching that scene. I have a lot of critique I can give to Spielberg, but a lot of his films are really good at suspense, and John Williams' music is just also great with it. It's hard to stop watching it. But the film, notice that actually there's quite a few dolly in, as we see, even just as we start the scene. There's dolly in there. Some dolly in here, very slow one there, and when he starts walking towards it. There. Notice the dollying in there. And I think about what dollying in a lot of times is for us. Remember, most film techniques, if not all of them, are kind of recreating how we perceive the world or how we interact in the world a little bit. Any good film technique is supposed to be doing that. Anything that doesn't do that is probably more likely someone by pretentiousness. So anything that really is doing that, for instance, is when you think about I think the reason we tend not to notice it in film is because it's recreating that feeling we have when we're focusing on something or someone, the moving in it closer, kind of everything else starts to melt away when we focus on one particular thing. So notice how, and I think that's why we tend not to notice it in films until we're told to notice it. And it's the same when when the films are closing up on a person. The dollying in here as he gets closer and more intent. I think we don't even notice it, especially when we have someone looking at something. I think it really helps us not even notice the dollying in. But yeah, That's very much a technique that helps engage the audience even more in the film. We talk about zoom and dollying, and I'm sure you've heard of maybe the dolly zoom or sometimes the zolly, where it's a combination of zooming and dollying, so that it creates this weird vertigo effect. You see it here from Jaws. It's a quick little clip. That shot. So as you can see, we went from a telephoto lens to a wide angle lens. You can tell just by the fact that we got to more space kind of was brought in from the sides. His features are elongated, whereas when it started, as we can see, see the space was more blurry in the background. The features were a little more flatter. So we know that we went from a telephoto lens to a wide angle lens, which means, if I'm right, telephoto lens, which means we were further away, and so basically, as we see, we dollied in and we zoomed out. Basically, is what happened here, and that's creating that zolly zoom. Yeah. And that creates that vertigo feeling. It was recreating kind of just this feeling of your stomach dropping, I guess, when you realize basically a kid is being eaten by a shark. It's trying to recreate that feeling. Crane shot. Now, basically, there's nothing. This particular a crane shot, in a sense, is going to has the ability to kind of create a few different things going on in it. So it's a shot that is created by movement of a camera mounted on an elevated arm or crane that in turn is mounted on a vehicle that, if shooting requires it, can move on its own power or be pushed along tracks. And crane shot can recreate a feeling of a dolly, or dollying in, a dolly out. It can create a high angle shot and then a low angle shot, all in one shot, basically. So in a sense, a crane allows for all kinds of movement. Look at a scene. I'm trying to decide if I want to show the whole scene. Let's see, Touch of Evil. This is a well-known shot of basically a very long one take, all filmed with a crane. We'll just show a little bit of it. But you should watch the whole shot. It's a very cool shot in the fact that they were able to film it all in one take. As you see, we're up on a high crane right now. And the camera is basically kind of following this car, which, as we've seen, just had a bomb put in it, unbeknownst to these people. So we follow the car, and then we end up following this couple who end up walking very close to the car. All again, this is all one take, all with a crane, a camera that's on a crane on a car. This is the main couple in the film. And this is the car with the bomb in it. But basically, you can see that this car, the crane shot allows for all kinds of shots, a high angle shot, a kind of a medium shot here, down low. It's kind of gives you this is the beginning of the film. It's kind of an introduction to the city or this little town area, and an introduction to these characters. And it's just a good way and long takes, you might notice, tend to keep your attention, because without a cut, it kind of makes cuts inadvertently kind of just take away your attention span just a little bit. So a long take tends to keep your attention a little, just that longer, especially if it's a moving scene. A lot of times long takes with movement helps keep the audience's attention. So you can see why they probably wanted to do that. So again, I recommend watching this entire scene and just see how they were able to create it. You could see some slight mistakes, maybe some bumps, but I think it's a pretty good first. This is definitely, a lot of filmmakers have been tried to do something like this. Alfonso Cuarón definitely tries to do this a lot in his films. Yeah, but this is you'll see just basically the use of a crane and how it's able to create different compositions in one take. Handheld is another approach to operating the moving camera, in which the operator holds the camera as opposed to mounting the camera on a tripod, dolly, or Steadicam. The relatively unstable frame typical of a handheld camera is often used to invoke distressed states of mind or documentary realism. Let me show you a clip from Saving Private Ryan. You may have seen this film or heard of it, but it definitely has, they use a handheld feel. So as you can see, that creates a sort of handheld feel. So think about what mood was achieved with that use of handheld. Why would they choose to create that kind of documentary-ish style feel to it? And yeah, we'll just continue to discuss that in class. But think of why they use that. What mood was achieved with handheld? Steadicam is another way to hold the camera. A camera is basically suspended from an articulated arm that is attached to a vest strapped to the camera person's body, permitting the operator to remain steady during handheld shots. The Steadicam removes jumpiness and is now often used for smooth, fast, and intimate camera movement. Let me show you a clip that uses this Steadicam technique.
Where's Dad? He's going on a trip.
So yeah. So think about what mood it was achieved with the use of Steadicam. Notice how it was different than handheld, where it felt this kind of documentary style, where instead Steadicam kind of creates this feeling like we're there with them. So yeah, think of what mood that was they're trying to achieve with using a Steadicam. I want to show you just a clip from the beginning of the film called From the Passion of Christ, where they use a combination of a crane and a Steadicam. So this is where the cinematographers start using both, you might say. So watching these special features of this, they were talking about how they used a crane and had the camera operator on that crane, and it lowered from basically from the trees down to the ground, and he just stepped off easily, so that to create this kind of just smooth transition from the going from the heavens down to the earth to see basically this is a portrayal of Jesus here. And think about too why they might have decided to do that too. What was their point of wanting to have the crane coming down from the sky and into the ground with this this kind of disembodied view, you might say. Cinematographer also deals with speed and shot length, as we talked about before. Shot speed and length. Slow motion is a cinematographic technique that decelerates action on screen. It is achieved by filming the action at a rate greater than the normal frames per second. You might think you have to film slower, but actually no, you're filming faster so that you're getting more frames per second. So that when you play it back, it's actually slower. When the shot is then played back at the standard frame rate, cinematic time proceeds at a slower rate. Fast motion, cinematographic technique that accelerates action on screen. It is achieved by filming the action at a rate less than the normal frames per second. When the shot is then played back at the standard frame rate, cinematic time proceeds at a more rapid rate. And then a long take is basically a sequence shot, a shot that can last anywhere up to 10 minutes. Similar to the shot I showed you from, I'm blanking on the name, the crane shot that I showed you, the shot, Touch of Evil. It was a long take with a crane. And that basically is, a lot of times long takes can take up to 10 minutes. I think that one's only about 4 minutes. And but that creates a feeling too, as I was saying. It tends to make the audience a little more immersed. So here's an example of a slow motion. I'm sure you've seen slow motion in plenty of films, but here's just a quick little. A lot of times it's used to stay in the moment in films. As we see in this film, it's a little bit more practical because it has to do with the speed that the mind is going at. It's going so fast that regular motions seem slow. And as you can see, they have to film with more frames per second. And that creates a certain feeling too. And here's a scene from a movie that uses fast motion.
Seemed impossible to fake when someone else instead of me always seems to know the way. Then I look at you and the world's all right with me. Know it's gonna be.
So yeah, you can get a sense that a certain sense of the feeling that they wanted you to feel with creating that fast motion. And again, that was filmed with less frames per second. Now, I'm not sure if they actually literally walked all the way to where they needed to go and basically creating kind of a time-lapse situation, but they might have done that, or they might have found some moments to fade and cut because it's so kind of jittery. They would be able to do that. But obviously created that sense of that fast motion of walking from that desert area all the way to that car. And it created that kind of weird feeling. It definitely creates a certain feeling if you think about it, going fast motion. So I'd like you guys to look at these clips. I have clips in the PowerPoints. Go through the PowerPoint and look at, I have about 4 clips, and I want you to analyze them according to cinematography, what we've already looked at. What kind of shots are in it? What kind of focal length was in it? Or what angle, high angle or low angle, and consider what those things mean and why did they choose to do that. Let me just look at as a shot. We'll do this maybe in class as well, but for the online section, you'll have to just do it on your own as part of an assignment. But look at this clip from the first Mission Impossible. And what I mean by analyze it, I don't want you to just say like, medium shot. Yeah, it was there. Medium shot, close up. Why is it there? Why are we looking at this? So this would be that was a chest height. Sure, we can first what you're gonna have to do is go through and just identify these shots. What's in it? Like for instance, this shot. It's a medium close up because it's got chest high. Where are we? Just below eye level, I might say. And maybe the reason that is because we want to feel like this character still has a certain presence. A lot of times you'll see films that are shot just below the eye level, even if they're in a distressed state, which in this case, this character is right now. But a lot of times it's just to give a certain dynamic feel to the character. What else is in this scene? Oh, right, we already have the background. We can kind of see where we are, but it's a little out of focus. First, I would want you to go through and just identify what you're looking at. Then once you start identifying it, you might start to realize, oh, why is this happening? So we have an established shot here. character walks into the established shot. And we have a meeting between these characters. This, by the way, is a spy scene. It's Mission Impossible. His entire crew has been killed. So just so you know that when you're watching this, and you start to get a sense of maybe why some of the angles are used. This scene starts out pretty cordial. These shots here are pretty straightforward, medium close-ups to get emotion, and then it goes in to get more emotion later. You get a medium wide.
You follow me? Yeah, I follow.
And then notice as we get more intense, the scene, we have close-up. Not only do we have a close-up, the shot is canted. Everything else is out of focus here. And it's obviously closer. We're trying, not only that, it's below the eye level too, a little bit drastically below the eye level here, so that it can't, it's drastically below the eye level so that it's kind of creating a certain distorted feeling. Of course, again, below the eye level means that this person has a certain sense of superiority here. But notice that the canted nature of this shot makes him seem maybe a little off. That maybe it's not in the superior position. Same here with the other character as well. It's quite a drastic shot to create that. So yeah, analyze each of these clips. Just point out, notice what's being used here. This is a low angle shot. It's in a close up shot. It's shallow focus field. Once you start analyzing the shots, you'll start to notice maybe why they're using it or where they're placing it in the scene. Notice this scene has and then you might even notice, okay, why is this scene? You might say most of the shots, once we get halfway through, are extreme close-ups of the character faces. Then there's even an insert because he uses a piece of gum, which actually turns out to be a makeshift bomb. So that's an insert shot. I think there's a certain point where it's an extreme close-up of the gum on the piece of glass. But yeah, so I have 4 scenes here. I want you to go through and just look at each of these scenes and notice, and just literally, you might have to at first just write down, what is this scene? What is this shot? What happened here? You'll just have to go through and write down what is the shot, and then you'll start noticing why they plotted it throughout the scene and why they edited it that way in the film. So, and these are the things I want you to look for when you're looking at cinematography, when you're watching a film too. A lot of times people think cinematography is just the lighting, but for what we're going to be focusing on mostly is the lenses, the shot types, the movement of the camera, whether they use slow motion or fast motion. This scene does use slow motion, so maybe consider why they do that, and the angles as well. And they use it for a particular reason to create a certain feeling. Every film will do this. So yeah, please look at all these shots. I have from 4 different films, and just analyze it. And then we can talk about it in class as well. All right, thank you.